process. In February 2016,
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, there's obviously an issue with the sound in here, so we're going to carry on. So please keep quiet, and you may be able to hear.
Switch the microphone on.
Chairman, if I may, we should be to abuse members of the public if they cannot
Thank you
hear.
for your comment, just Reid. Did you want to-
Councillor Reeves.
Are there new batteries in it? It could be that they need new
so it
batteries.
sounds as though this is on, so it keeps kicking in and out.
Can you hear at the back?
No.
So the process. In February 2016, Cabinet gave approval to consult on the idea of extending existing on-street charging policy to other roads in and around the beach area. In doing so, it was clear to members that the proposal was at feasibility stage, with more work to be done once public views have been gained. This work by officers is yet to proceed, and it is clear that the overview from this committee and the many views received from the public will be key to Cabinet in defining what should be done next. The consultation itself has been successful in gaining many local views, and the report is shown in full in Appendix A. The Council has also received petitions related to the proposal, and Appendix B shows the report already provided to Cabinet for these to be considered in the first instance through this committee. I won't go into detail of the individual petitions because petitioners will wish to do that themselves. An equalities assessment has also been undertaken to consider the potential impact of the proposal in its current form and to consider whether any particular groups would be disadvantaged more than others. The EQIA report itself also recommends specific action in terms of potential mitigation against the impacts identified in the form of an action plan. This report is shown in Appendix C. The response to consultation has been strong. I personally thank all those that have taken time to make their views known. This and related petitions now provide good information which if Cabinet members wish can now be used to consider the project in more detail. I also thank my officers for the tremendous effort in listening and gathering views from the public at the various meetings and for clarifying the position reached thus far, as well as the considerable effort made in producing the report in time for this meeting. The consultation closed on the 6th of April, with the Corporate Research and Information team providing the consultation report, which was only finalised 2 weeks ago. Although consultation in this form is relatively costly, it is clear that in this case, as the beach is used by so many, that it is essential to gain the views of the public. Section 5 of the covering report highlights some key outcomes, but the report itself gives a clear position for members to now consider. The process followed has been transparent. The information related to the project is already in the public domain, apart from one report which is yet to be finalised. This draft report highlights a potential impact on natural habitat at Shell Bay. And that's based on the fact that perhaps some people may wish to cross the ferry to the Purbeck, given the current charge proposal in Poole. The report will be placed on the website once finalised. According to legal advice received, generating a surplus income from on-street parking is allowable if the council complies with the legislation in accounting for that money. We have made this position very clear to those showing concern over case law. I'll move on to the need for the project. As Section 4 of the covering report highlights, the general need is twofold and has been made clear to the public over consultation, various meetings, drop-in sessions, in literature, in leaflets, as well as on the web. The two elements of the need are to improve on the current traffic position that currently exists. And the second one is to cater for expected growth in the future. This is related to the already approved Sustaining Poole Seafront, which is a SPD document, a planning document, which was approved by councillors in December 2015. It's clear that when the sun comes out, traffic-related issues already exist near to the beaches. There is good evidence of how, over time, various committees have tried to improve the traffic position. And this has been based on complaints in the past. At very busy times, both traffic and parking issues prevail. There's also been 80 casualties within the area over the last 5 years. These have taken place on a variety of roads, and 80% of them have involved injury to local people. Our aim is to design a safer system, in whatever form, for the future. With further improvement to the beach offer, as in the document outlined previously, more people will likely to be wanting to use the beach. The improved facilities will be attractive. With this, it is likely that traffic, safety and parking conditions could worsen over time, and the beach offer could suffer. The wider aim, as articulated in the SPD itself, is to design a strategy that provides clearer parking arrangements, enhanced bus provision and safer transit, especially for those choosing more sustainable means of travel. The aim is to help facilitate travel demand into the future, by all modes, to allow the world-class beach offer to flourish further, to the benefit of everyone wishing to visit the beaches. The offer summary recommendations shown in section 2.1, and they speak for themselves, so I won't read those out. Thank you.
The lead petitioner, Bob Lister. Thank you. Come forward, Bob. May I have the mic? Yes, sir. Thank you. You have 4 minutes, Bob, please.
Okay, thank you very much. I think the Chair and Councillors, you'll appreciate the strength of feeling by the people attended here tonight, and if you were here when we had all the canoes and yachts and things outside, you'll realise how much people are against this scheme. So I Bob Lister presented this petition to full council of 3,300 names. Some 400 more were available after the official cut-off time, and all were strongly against the proposed pay and display at roads adjacent to the beaches for the following reasons. This is purely a revenue-raising exercise. It is not about road safety or traffic calming. The 1984 Road Traffic Regulation Act, Section 32, does not permit the making of charges simply to generate income. Road safety evidence, which we've just heard, provided by officers to some 80 road traffic accidents, were erroneous, as most occurred on the current pay and display areas. Roads like Evening Hill and Whitley Bay. Very few happened in the areas that are proposed for pay and display. So that was really, well, beggars belief, quite honestly. In fact, road safety will deteriorate if this scheme goes ahead, as people would park outside these areas and busy roads would need to be crossed.
Exactly.
Proposed cost of metering and signage quoted at £500,000, yet no quotes tenders have been secured from Parkium or any other of the preferred suppliers. Return on investment is stated at 2 to 3 years, yet what are the actual costs likely to be, including electrics and installation? We need mobile friendly devices. Could it end up being £1 million? No one knows yet. If people actually use them. It could be 4 to 6 years as a realistic payback if people actually use them. Many object to the visual impact of ugly meters. Tourists. We are a tourist town, yet tourists would be discouraged from coming to Poole. Yet their signatures on the petitions were disallowed from being counted. Yet valuable income is being missed by Borough of Poole by lack of sufficient meters and poor signage of Beach Road car park that could provide safe parking for Branksome Chime. Branksome
Sorry,
car
sorry,
park-
Mr. Lister, I'm going to have to come in here. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not a public meeting. Now, I'm being lenient, so please, will you keep quiet while people are making their presentation? Thank you.
Branksome Dean car park is also poorly signed, again causing lost revenue. If this proposal goes ahead, it will be the end of many users of the beach, Branksome Island for National Trust, Dorset Wildlife Trust, churchgoers at the Church of Transfiguration, North Haven Yacht Club members will have nowhere to park without paying a fortune. The Borough of Poole online Have Your Say survey of some 2,083 respondents, 91% were strongly against paying display charges to visit the beach. Businesses were concerned about the financial impact on their customers and staff. Most of the restaurants, cafes and hotels affected use staff on minimum wages that are from Bournemouth. So parking permits and public transport on social hours is non-existent. How will they manage? This fiasco has raised much concern. It has been covered on BBC TV, the Sunday Politics programme, local radio, The Echo, and is also being filmed for ITV Parking Wars. So, councillors, don't recommend its approval to proceed to Cabinet. Please vote to reject these ill-thought-out parking charges. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lister. Could I ask Zach Furbank to, please? Oh, sorry, ladies and gentlemen, my fault. Could I have any points of clarification from the committee? No points of clarification, Mr. Furbank. Would you like to take the chair, please?
Thank you. I will try and speak up because I think I want to be heard, unlike some members of the council, perhaps. My name is Zach Furbank. I'm a local resident here in Poole. Last month I handed in a petition which had some 4,200 signatures. That number has now risen to 4,528. This petition is to stop the plans of introducing pay and display machines at Branksome, Canford Cliffs and Sandbanks beaches. My grandmother, who's 88 years old, she has just come to this meeting after going for a swim in the sea. These proposals will stop her from doing that. She goes swimming nearly every day in the summer. We come from a family who've been raised on the beach. As a child, I spent most of my summers down on the beach and I loved it. I come from a large family. My parents couldn't afford to take us abroad, but we didn't need to, as we had the beautiful beaches and parks instead. This proposal will effectively take the beach away from normal families and residents. We cannot afford £15 a day to visit the beach, and we shouldn't have to. We already pay more for rent and mortgage repayments than most places in the UK. I'd say if there's one good thing that's come from this experience, is that it has sparked an interest in local politics in me and many others. And it has, I have to say, has been a really eye-opening experience for me. I understand that the council is under pressure because of budget cuts and needs to raise money, but this plan has been completely rejected by the residents of Poole, so another solution has to be found. We currently have a large Conservative majority in Poole Council. This then must mean that most of us voted for a Conservative to represent us. It seems to me that this is a party-led initiative by the Conservatives. If the Conservatives make this proposal a reality, then you are not representing the people who elected you. I started the online petition, and within 1 week it had 2,000 names. If I had the time and resources, I know we could get tens of thousands of names. As I am yet to meet a single resident who agreed with this proposal. It is wrong to charge residents to swim on the beach, or to go for walks on the promenade, participate in water sports, or even just playing in the sand. You should be encouraging people to become more active and healthy. These plans do the complete opposite. The petition that I created and started and over 4,000 people signed is not to lower the amount that you will charge us or to reduce the payment hours. It is to stop the plans of pay-to-play machines altogether. We're not looking for a compromise in this regard. I urge you to listen to the residents who elected you, who undeniably say, do not allow these pay-to-play machines to become reality. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Furbank. Any questions of clarification from the committee?
Mr. Chairman, can we get an opportunity to question the officer, as you didn't give us an opportunity?
Yes, we'll bring that up, yes. Could I ask Petitioner Barbara Silbury? Thank you, Barbara.
Thank you, Chairman. Actually, it's sideways.
Sorry.
First of all, thank you very much indeed for allowing me to speak.
Hold it
Hold it closer.
Closer to the mouth.
Thank you for allowing me to speak. Now, you may be surprised or not surprised that I actually agree with everything that's been said. Absolutely everything that has been said. And the petitions, and there's no point in going over a second time, because everybody is aware. But at the end of the day, as everybody knows with councils, you only can spend what you're given. And if your money goes down via the government, you've got to find it some way. And if you don't, then as very essential services like social services will fall apart. So you have to find your money to make that somehow. As I said, I actually agree. But at the end of the day, we've also got to see the point of view of the officers. They have a directive to somehow keep your town going. If they don't do it, believe you me, something else will be cut somewhere. That is a fact. So at the end of the day, what you need by everybody is a fair and reasonable response. Those are the two most essential words, a fair and reasonable. And one of them I would suggest is the residents. Of course they don't want to pay or have machines outside. And I personally think they should be the ones only to have the choice of having parking permits. I've actually had one. My family have had one and it works. It doesn't mean to say you have to park there all the time, so there is not the inevitable congestion. Also, of course, it means that people have not got the long drive that the illusion that people think they have. Many pay extra tax. You could say for the privilege, but I'm not going to discriminate because that's a really wrong word. Nobody should be discriminated. And as far as I'm concerned, when it comes to these roads that have been labelled, I would suggest you start looking further afield. Start spreading some of your parking charges further apart. Visitors, it's an illusion that they all want to go to the beach. They don't all want to go to the beach. But, yes, of course they do go very frequently, but they also shop. So there is no reason why you shouldn't have a viable park and ride. And believe it or not, when people go in London to see something, what do? You get off a train and you choose between a taxi, a bus, or usually the underground. So you're going on a vehicle to get to where you want to go. That is similar here, and many of them may just want to shop anyway. But at the end of the day, it is not necessarily going to be presumed that they will go automatically to the beaches. But the prime thing I'm concerned about too are the businesses. Do you realise all these businesses have staff? Particularly in the summer, they have to park either outside, like the hotels, but one business in particular who asked me to speak said she reckons it's going to cost her 70,000 a year if her staff have to pay for parking on machines. So at the end of the day, as far as I'm concerned, you have to find a solution. You cannot just willy-nilly think this is a good idea and do it. So think of the residents, think of the visitors, think of people like Branksome, the hotels.
Thank you, Mrs. Ivory. I'll have to close you down there.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions of clarification?
Mr. Chair, Mrs. Ivory, are you suggesting to us that the Canford Cliffs business community are in favour of these charges?
No, not at all.
Right. That's what I got from your...
No, you didn't listen. I said at the end, facts of fairness and reasonableness have got to be taken into consideration. I'd like it to be like it, so would everybody else. But at the end of the day, your council has to find the money.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? We have two written submissions from North Hants Yacht Club. North Haven, sorry, Yacht Club.
North Haven, you don't even know your yacht.
Sorry?
You said you don't even know your yacht.
Okay, the written submissions are in the pack.
For members.
Okay, ward councillors have asked to speak. Can I ask Councillor David Brown?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, members. Like most of us, I've had lots of representations from residents living in my ward. I represent Burley and Bearwood in the north of Poole, and I agree completely with the objectors and the petitioners regarding this. My constituents in Burley and Bearwood in North Poole almost always have to use their cars to visit our beaches due to the distance from that area, and also because of the poor public transport links that they have into Poole and onto the beachfront. We all know as local residents that we have local knowledge, and many people will try to find streets with free parking. This proposal will only push parking into other streets and cause wider parking issues in that area. We have wonderful blue flag beaches, and all residents and all the council taxpayers should have easy and affordable access to the beaches which their council tax pays to maintain. These proposals will disenfranchise poorer families in our community and those who live in areas without public transport links to the beaches, such as many of those in my ward. For that reason, I believe this committee should recommend that these proposals are withdrawn entirely.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. If I could ask Councillor Graham Orson, please.
Can I speak from here, Chairman? Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My reason for being here this evening is the request of my other two ward councillors in Newtown. I'll get to that in a moment. But initially, I'd like to speak about my involvement and also my colleague, Malcolm Farrell's involvement with this procedure. And it was that we had a meeting of the TAG, as you might well know, and the recommendation was to actually just go into a consultation, not to approve it, but the political people in Poole made it sound like we actually wanted it to go through and were approving a scheme. That isn't the way it works. So when we actually had that meeting, and it was voted against. I couldn't understand why, because it was promoting democracy, wasn't it? And why I say that is because my experience goes back 20 years as a member, and I think it's the third time this subject has come up on the tag meetings, certainly that I was involved with, and it was talked down, sent into the long grass. But it wasn't because of the huge response as there is this evening. It was members that didn't want it. So, and just a few residents. But what we did actually do was to have a really constructive conversation at TAG on what and how this may be acceptable. Because we knew at that time that there was a big resistance to it. Not that we had representations to a high level at TAG. And we talked all through the items of positive ways forward that could actually make something work. Because we are now in the 21st century, aren't we? We're supposed to be. And I don't see why we have to have posts outside of people's houses, and it's going to cost a fortune to collect the money. And I know that the representations I've had over the years that local Poole residents really would like a local residence parking permit. And the lady said there quite eloquently that she wants to go to a lot of different places, not just one, to Branksome or Canford Cliffs, but throughout the Poole, because there's so many things to do. So that's something, you know, look, I spoke with the portfolio holder in great depth before the cabinet meeting. We went through, they actually made the recommendation for this consultation to take part, to actually undertake all the issues really, but it was only on the one, that was the extension of the street parking charges to the adjacent roads to the beaches. So it wasn't the whole agenda of this evening. But we did talk very positively about it, because as the lady said, we have to look at all the ways that we can to actually make things work better. Over the years, there's been 3 applications, Chairman, to actually bring forward this scheme to fruition, and it never happened. We never worked to this level we are now. So what happened then was that because it was made into a political thing, I was criticised along with my colleagues in Newtown of voting for this scheme. That is not the truth. We actually delivered a leaflet to rescind that, which was that we were just going to consultation. So that's what it got to. But really, I've got to say that TAG did not agree to the scheme.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you.
Questions of clarification from the committee? No? Could I ask Councillor Haynes, please, to take the chair?
Can you hear me? I think you can. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I speak on behalf of many residents that I've spoken to, both in Canford Cliffs ward, of which I represent, and other Poole residents. I attended 2 of the drop-in sessions held during the consultation period and spoke to many more. Concerns were raised by volunteer groups for the National Trust, as well as Dorset Wildlife Trust. The manager of the hotel in Branksome Island has also expressed concerns for his staff, particularly those with school-aged children who make daily trips over for the school run. All these concerns are genuine and affect people's lives and could potentially deter volunteers from continuing the good work that they do. Some have challenged, as you have heard, whether the scheme would actually help traffic management or ease congestion. Poole is renowned for its blue flag beaches, with Sandbanks being top of the list. Most visitors will head to this destination. As we all well know, there is only one road in and one road out of the peninsula. Proper consideration be given to all the issues raised from the responses received, as well as the various points that have been raised by the speakers this evening, including the written submissions from Branksome Park and Canford Cliffs Residents Association and North Haven Yacht Club. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Haynes. Any questions of clarification from the committee? Okay, then I'd like to offer questions of clarification from the committee to the officer when he's finished his biscuit.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Fine, thank you. We've got reports in front of us which have absolutely no reference whatsoever to any costings, any pricings, and we're expected to make a judgment on this. Could the lead officer please give us some indication of what they anticipate the two proposals A and B would generate in terms of income, and then how that income would be spent? And I would obviously reserve the opportunity to have my discussion and debate comments later.
I'm sure we're going to get the answer to that question. I'll go first.
Chair, a very good question, and what I would say is that the previous reports on the subject in terms of gaining approval for consultation fully outlined the expected costs for the investment as well as the expected income. There was an appendix attached to the previous report which shows that detail. Effectively, the income expected is for a full year would be £200,000, and that's based on a number of assumptions that are all outlined in that previous report. That report went to Cabinet and indeed to TAG and sought approval at the feasibility stage. They are only estimates.
Thank you, Chair. If I may come back on that one, I'm not a member of Cabinet, I was not a member of TAG. I haven't seen any of the financial statements, they didn't come to full council, so I would still like the clarifications, please.
Thank you.
Well, as I've said, it's an estimate for a full year of £200,000. In terms of the capital cost, Jason, you may want to know I'm reading the right scenario here. £469,000. That capital includes for the cost of signage, the cost of machines, and there is a complete split down by area of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 areas that are outlined in, which relate to the leaflet that was provided to all members of the public. So the assessment is initial, and it shows that there's a potential payback time, as I think somebody else mentioned, of approximately 3 years over the whole period. Hopefully that's enough clarification.
Thank you. So that information is out there, so if you could furnish Councillor Crook with that information. Councillor Reid.
Yeah, a very good question, Mr. Chairman. How much did this consultation cost?
I asked over a week ago and I haven't had the answer.
£15,000.
I think you have had the answer this morning by email. I have the email in front of me at 10:14 a.m. You received an email. I can't say whether you've opened it. But the costs for external costs for all 3 consultations, and I have provided a split down into 3 for Councillor Eads, is the external cost is £13,000 over 3 consultations. That's made up of an external staff cost of £2,000. Given the quantity of the response, which I welcome, and as I've said before, we've had to ask for external support for one of those, in fact this particular one that we're discussing now, so that cost us £2,000. The printing and postage costs for parking in parks is £3,634. The on-street beaches, which is the one we're discussing now, is £4,434. And the Upton Country Park, which is later on the agenda, is £2,987.
Question is, Julian, you indicated in your report there were 80 injuries in the beach area. How many of those occurred in these roads that are scheduled for on-street parking meters?
Very few of them directly on the residential roads, if that's what you mean.
Exactly like this.
So what we have got is a split down of the, all I have ever said, and I've said this at the Residents Association meeting as well, is that there are accidents that have happened, collisions, and those have caused 80 casualties, and 80% of those are involved local people that have caused injury. There are many more collisions in shunts and things like that. The answer to your question is that it's random, but when you get into a car, you go from A to B and you travel through roads. Whether you end up to a parking meter in a residential road, it means that you've come from somewhere else and you're potentially So the impact is varied. It is on the main roads, and that there are a few accidents in terms of the residential roads that have the parking meters.
Thank you. Councillor Borski?
Yeah, there's an attempt to justify the introduction of this scheme on the basis of reducing congestion that occurs occasionally on the peninsula. Thanks. There is an attempt to justify the introduction of these charges on the basis that it would reduce congestion on the peninsula, which occurs on peak holidays and bank holidays, etc. And also, by inference, is going to reduce these 80 accidents that have taken place over 5 years. Can you identify for me the study that's taken place that's actually analysed this congestion, who it was done by and when? And what options it examined in relation to reducing that congestion and reducing those accidents, and how out of that options analysis you have come forward with a suggestion of charging for parking spaces that are already parked in. I and many people are at a loss to see how that's going to reduce congestion whatsoever. So I'll be interested in knowing what the professional study, the expert study was that's been undertaken.
The only study that's been done on the accident breakdown, there's been feasibility. It's been undertaken by Martin Baker, my officer who's qualified in such things and is a road safety manager. He has a breakdown of the individual roads and collision rates per 100 million vehicle kilometres in line with DFT requirements. There has been no, as I've said before, there has been no detailed assessment because the first point of call for this study has been to seek approval to consult. We need people's views, we have them, and we want them so that we can devise a scheme that is sympathetic to those views as far as we can. So I haven't done I've done a feasibility assessment. The congestion is evident, and we have 10 years to 15 years of different committees. I can read them all out. So
My question's been answered, Chairman. I can save him some time. There's been no study. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Councillor Hadley.
Thank you, Chair. I was asked about the 80 accidents, and the question I was going to ask is still stands really, which is if the same number of cars are travelling but paying to park, how are we actually going to reduce accidents, particularly as And the second one, if it is possible, is just around the lifetime of the machines. In the salt area around that part of the town, how long are the machines that we've already put there last on average?
typical duration in terms of the expectancy of life is within 10 to 20 years. If you're absolutely right in a maritime environment, corrosion and that side of things, there is potential to look at the detail in terms of that marine-based material that is more durable. None of that work has been done. Clearly we need to identify whether or not heaters are the option. And your first question, I forget, just repeat.
The 80 accidents, how do we know that's going to reduce if there's still the same number of cars or more cars under the scheme parking and paying as against not paying?
The premise is, as it clearly states in the Sustainable Sea Fund, is that there is a strategy here. There's a long-term strategy, and parking is only one part of that strategy. It's very clear from what members have agreed to back in December in the report that there is a multi-pronged tactic to improve the access to the beach through sustainable mode. And one of the clear areas that we feel is the right thing to do earlier is to consider the parking arrangements. Now it's clear that there is a lot of demand down there, and it's clear from the reports and the complaints previously that people have asked for that side of things to be dealt with better. I'm not saying here tonight that we've got it right. That's why we're seeking to improve that. And it includes signage, it includes all sorts of things.
Thank you. Councillor Parker?
Yes, I'm puzzled because when we looked at this in 2010-11, the payback period was regarded as 4 to 5 years. So I'm wondering how we're able to get a much shorter payback period. Is it using solar panels on the pay machines?
No, but that's a good idea, and that's something that we would consider. We've done a lot of solar work recently, and we're identifying areas where we can reduce the cost of energy. The difference is in terms of the scope. In the previous times when it did come to committee in the past, it was for different roads and it was for different setup. There's been a little bit more work as well, though, in terms of that.
Councillor Reeds?
Look at me with frustration there, as if you...
Sorry, I've just been told by Jason that the machines have also gone down, which is the cost of the actual machines that we costed in the feasibility study since the first time we looked at it have actually gone down.
Chairman, I've got to carry on this question about the accidents. Our officer appears to be telling us that there is a strategy out there that none of us know that's almost to stop people going to the beach by car. And that is what's going to stop the accidents or reduce the accidents. His answer to Councillor Hadley didn't help at all, I'm afraid. So I wonder if I could ask it in a different way, is that all of this money, this £200,000 of income, what extra buses or cycles or other sustainable modes of transport are we going to get with that money?
So there's an access strategy on page 25 of the seafront strategy, sustainable seafront strategy. Most people visit the seafront do so by car, and on a sunny day in school holidays, long queues can form, especially at Sandbanks. The access strategy aims to minimise the number of cars arriving at beaches by promoting public transport and cycling, spread the car parking load, and reduce congestion by directing traffic using advanced warning signage, which much we've already put in and we plan to do some more. To seek out and maintain the present volume of car parking spaces close to the beach. Explore and encourage innovative, I said it right for the first time, solutions, such as water bus and land train. Buses play a significant public transport role for the beaches, and the two main services, number 50 and 52, cover bus stops within walking distance to beaches. However, it would be desirable to see improved bus linkages to the eastern beaches. The key difficulty of public transport provision is the huge variability of demand, depends on weather and school holidays. It goes on to talk about the increase in cycle parking at keynotes, looking at luggage lockers, introducing and encourage cycle hire providers, improving the routes to the beach, taking the least traffic routes. I'm in a difficult position because the bus services in this country are deregulated, so I don't control those bus services. It's a competitive market. What I can do is influence the top level people that run those services and have won those through competition. And our aim, as we've already started, is to influence that, to provide better bus services. So you can see this is a longer term plan, but first of all, the intent, which we have no study work for, as I've answered already, and as yet, is to improve the current position through the parking and then facilitate a better choice for the public. And those people, and I'm not talking about everyone come by bus, but I'm talking about a small percentage that make things better. Many people can't come by bus. They have all sorts of reasons for not doing so. So we're not trying to facilitate, or not facilitate the car. We're trying to facilitate all sorts of modes, and our park is full. If they have that choice, they can turn up the hill and go to alternative parking. Beach Road is not brilliantly signed. It needs an awful lot of work to be done, and part of the sustainable transport strategy is exactly to do that.
Thank you. Right, members of the committee, I'll now throw this open to debate. Anybody like to start out? Councillor Wolski.
Slightly, no, yes, if I could do. I've got one. You with a beer.
Thank you, Chairman. At the end of this, I'm going to make a proposal to the committee. But I have to say I am totally and utterly opposed to this scheme and have been since the first initiation of it several years ago, through the second and now through the third. I actually feel somewhat sorry for the officers having to sit here and try and justify this on the grounds of it being a transport-orientated or safety-orientated initiative. It isn't. In its other modes, and in this it's all about raising revenue. And, you know, that's not a bad thing, but in principle, frankly, I'm against raising revenue by charging on roads. I think if the council was actually providing a facility, like a car park, it's quite legitimate to charge for that facility. But there are so many unknowns here, and the response from the consultation has been so overwhelming. Why on earth would the council want to continue this and continue expending officer time and money on attempting to progress it? It's time to kill it off. And that's my time. And allow them to examine other schemes. We've heard about Beach Road, and to say it's poorly signposted, I think it's a sort of over-exaggeration on the quality of the signage to a huge degree. Being a local, you might just about find it. Being a stranger, you never will. And that's a 350-place car park. It brought in just under £10,000 last year, I was informed today. £9,000, whereas Sandbanks brought in something like £441,000. There has to be scope for that beach, which is adjacent to the car parks, to be improved, to be made safe, to be made attractive, somewhere people would actually want to park their car and bring in a significant amount of income to this council as well. It would also facilitate spreading the load along the beaches rather than the Sandbanks honeypot as we see it. Chairman, I am going to propose that this recommendation, an alternative to this recommendation, and frankly that will be along the lines of this proposal. This initiative is just scrapped, and the recommendation to Cabinet is to stop it now and to focus on other issues which have some opportunity of delivering some income and improving matters and actually coming to a successful conclusion, because frankly this is a dead duck.
Chair, I'm happy to second that. And for the following reasons, if I may. I have to say, when I read this report, I found it very presumptuous in assuming that this was the only option in front of us. And if Councillor Pulaski had not proposed scrapping it, I would have done, which is why I'm quite happy to second it. I think it's ill-judged. We haven't got the details of the costings, and if it is going to be 200,000 income, what's it actually going to be spent on? We're told it's going to be supporting the seafront, sustainable seafront strategy. How much of the 200,000 is going to go into that? It's going to support bus subsidies as well. Now, if you're going to run buses to the number and quantity that are needed to transport the number of people who will be actually going to the beach, they will need to be running every 10-15 minutes round the whole day, there and back. I'm quite certain that that will not necessarily run at a profit in the first instance, and therefore there would have to be significant subsidy. You can't spend this money 2, 3, 4 times. It's also got to keep the upkeep of those machines, the roads, and that's where the money is supposed to be invested in the highways. So I find that really not a satisfactory argument, and I think also it's discriminatory. We see in the report and in the Equalities Impact Assessment that the people that are most going to be affected are young families, and in particular mothers and young children, which again, of course, in terms of health and well-being is contrary to the Council's #1 strategic policy. It just seems to me that even if you subsidise the buses, mothers and young children will still have to pay. So they pay if they go by car, they pay if they go by bus. That is discriminatory when I can use my ticket, my card, my pensions card for free on the buses. So it is totally unfair system that is being introduced here, and I cannot support it for those reasons, which is why I'm quite happy to second the proposal. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, we're still in debate mode. Anybody else would like to speak?
Your committee, just to say to you, I parked on the Sandbanks today and crossed over on the ferry to go fishing. I estimated there was probably about 100, maybe 120 potential parking spaces in the roads around the Sandbanks. I probably got there around 9 o'clock and I only found 3 that were available for me to park for free. I certainly know from being a resident that come the weekends, they're all gone by 7, 8, 9 o'clock in the morning, particularly with people crossing over onto Shell Bay and to Branksome. So I think we're barking up the wrong tree here, actually. But I must also add to the committee that I believe our beaches are an asset, and we, as a town, which functions on tourism, needs to sell that asset. We've just got to come up with a different solution.
Councillor Reid?
Chairman, I'm also going to be supporting Councillor Velocity's suggestion here. I've been asked to specifically make a representation by Mrs Jackie Hardy of the Poole Harbour Watch. And for those who don't know Poole Harbour Watch, they're in effect the PCSOs of the harbour. They work closely with Dorset Police, and they are in effect marine inspectors looking after vessels in our harbour. They are going to suffer, they are volunteers, they will suffer by the introduction of parking charges on the roads around the Sandbanks specifically. We've heard earlier about the effect upon lower paid members of our society that work at the hotels, who will also struggle to pay for parking. And to echo Councillor Brooks' point, this is absolutely discriminatory against those in our borough who don't have the resources to pay. And to charge at this level is utterly discriminatory when we all pay in our council tax for our roads and beaches anyway. So I would absolutely be supporting this amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Reid. Councillor Hadley?
Thank you. I find myself agreeing with everything here. There is something about those people who don't have the luxury of having a car, and there are some 19% of the population in this town don't have a car and therefore don't have the luxury. And we do need to find ways to provide better public transport to get them to not just the beach, but as the lady from the from the business community said to other locations around the town. There was an hourly bus service from the town centre to the beach, and that's the best you get at the moment. So I do hope that in our aims to try and raise funding, we also look at that proportion of our population.
Thank you, Councillor Hubley. Councillor Gabriel.
Can everyone hear me? I think the equalities implications haven't been met here, so I think we need to send this back for further work, or actually, stop it dead now. I think it's right in saying this will affect the most needy in our society, particularly young parents and older people. By doing this, we're just moving the problem elsewhere, so I think we need to stop it dead now and move on to something different. As Councillor Tinsley says, our beaches are an asset, we just need to find a different way of using it.
Thank you, Chair. I've got concerns about this myself, and I totally agree with Councillor Leski that it should not be fair, it should go back. What about the people that have got to take their children to school early in the morning? That's first and everything. The elderly people that like to go out to the early morning swim to the jogging centre. Why are we putting that on if we're not going to let them get there, or whatever, if they can't get buses and they can't park? I at one stage was thinking about this, and when I've gone deeper into looking at the amount of people that have objected against this to those that agree with it, I've already said to myself I cannot support it deferred, and I will be voting for it to be dismissed straight away.
I have concerns about bus services, because back in 2003-04 we had bus services running from the Civic Centre to the beach, and it was an extremely wet season, and it cost an enormous cost over that period simply because the buses weren't being used. So I think we do need to look very carefully at a system of getting people to the beaches, but the bus system certainly didn't work in the past. And like my fellow councillors, I am unhappy with the present scheme before us.
Thank you, Chair. Also have road reservations, but I will. Sorry, I do have reservations, and I will support the recommendation to send this back for further work, just to make sure that every possible avenue is explored.
Chairman, could the proposal be repeated, please? The amendment. I think there's misunderstanding on the amendment.
There was a proposition. Yeah. Chairman, I think if I'm right, and Councillor Pulaski and the seconder can correct me, but I think the proposition was that the current proposals be not proceeded with, and that the council should focus on other initiatives to generate income. Is that correct?
And this item is not pursued, and the council concentrate on other questions.
Well, we finished the debate, so we'll have a vote, yeah.
That's the debate concluded.
Chair, just to clarify. Apologies, Councillors. I just want to clarify. In terms of the recommendations are such that we're not proposing to, in case people are misunderstanding this, I don't think we are, but I just want to double check. The proposal for you from officers is a recommendation to do further work, that is all, not to implement as proposed in any form. I just wanted to clarify. Thank you.
Chairman, I think we all understood that fully, which is why I put in the hours about discontinuing work on this, so we could focus perhaps on other things.
Okay, thank you. Okay, if the debate is concluded, we'll now move to the vote. Those in favour? Of the amended recommendation?
What is the recommendation?
All those in favour of the amended recommendation?
Chairman, if I could just clarify what the proposal is for the committee. The proposal that's been put forward by Councillor Pulowski, seconded by Councillor Brooke, is that the current proposal has been not pursued and that the council focuses on other proposals to raise income.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. So on that, all in favour? Against? Any abstentions? It's carried. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a small 5-minute comfort break. Anybody who wishes to leave now and has no interest in the second two items, you may do so. Thank you.